welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Acebo.
And we're here this week to talk about the Green Ring Conspiracy Part 9.
That we are.
It's episode 687. We're still going.
Yes. The farther we get into the Green Ring Conspiracy, the more I am curious as to what the plot post this album is going to be like, because I have no clue. And this episode is a very, it's a big one. I feel like as
agree.
far as setting up stuff.
I'm very excited to talk about this episode.
Yeah, me too. Do we have any cast updates?
Just a minor one, which is that the character of Mr. Dosh is voiced by Phil Lawler.
Classic.
Who hasn't been on an episode in over 200 episodes at this point. His previous one was a BTV.
Okay.
That aired in... Oh, gosh. Yeah, his last one was a BTV episode that aired in 2001.
Wow.
So it had been 10 years since he'd been at least a voice on an episode.
Interesting. Would 321 Penguins would have been in between there, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
321 Penguins happened like during Novacom, I believe.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Considering how deeply, and it seems to be centrally involved he is with the plot of Greater Odyssey now, I am very surprised that he took such a long gap in kind of recent history in regards to the show.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's totally fair. Like,
granted, listening to this in 2021, he's been working on the show for 10 years since.
Yeah, but like, I mean, he didn't from that, like from 2001, I guess, until like the Adventures in Odyssey Club began, he didn't direct an episode.
When did the club begin?
Like 2014.
Wow.
But yeah, he had a good 10 years where he was basically uninvolved in the show. And then came back with a
vengeance. A fiery vengeance.
Yep. Yeah, his first writing credit was January 1st, 2015, after having been gone
since 2001.
Yep. But he does appear as a voice in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yep.
Do we have a promo?
You know what, Andrew? Just for you.
For me?
We do have a promo.
Oh, yay.
On the next adventure in Odyssey, the appearance of Wit's son brings hope.
I have to confess, Jason, I couldn't be more surprised.
But for Eugene...
Computer has found the password for the Appleberry.
And Katrina...
I'm here to make a citizen's arrest.
Things are going from bad to worse.
He's gone.
Stop him!
Catch the action on the next adventure in Odyssey.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
This is... Odyssey almost held off long enough, like, just making cassette tapes for it to be cool to still make cassette tapes. Like, they almost made it.
You're right.
If they could have held out for, like, another 6 years, I feel like... I don't know. I mean, well, when did they stop making them?
They definitely didn't make any past album 50.
Yeah.
I don't know if they made them that far or not.
Well, it's not important. Anywho, cassette tapes are kind of cool now, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. Difficult. I'll stick to my digital media or vinyl. This episode begins, if we're clear to begin.
I don't know. Any other thoughts on the promo?
It promotes something.
Probably Adventures in Odyssey.
Maybe this episode? We don't know. Wit and Jason.
It's just weird to me, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. The promoting Jason in the promo is weird.
Yeah.
I know we established it last episode, but it does still feel like a spoiler. Yeah. And it's not even like they're like, oh, Jason's the stiletto in this promo. But, like, I don't know. It feels off.
Yeah, well, and that Jason's involved in not a super clear way.
Anyways, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's a bad promo take. That's
Anywho,
what I'm here for.
Whit and Jason are talking about the fact that Monty's in the hospital. This is picking up right where last episode left off, where it was revealed that Jason was the Stiletto. Take off that mask. I can't shave this beard, but I can take off the hat and sunglasses. That is clearly not suspicious at all.
Never.
But yeah, Jason explains that he hijacked Monty before Tanner got there and took him to the hospital, so he's being taken care of by Dr. Graham, and he is very much expecting things to go poorly from here on out, which is ominous. And I'm not gonna lie, listening through it, the first time for this episode, I didn't really agree with him. I didn't understand it. And then by the end of the episode, I was like, oh, no, things do seem to be going wrong, or something of the like.
Yes.
And I don't really remember how it all finishes out. Do you? Do you really?
Bits and pieces, but no.
Yeah. Like, there are parts of this episode that I definitely remember, like lines and things like that, but as far as major plot points of the next 3 episodes and the conclusion of this, I mean, as we said, I have no clue about what happens after this. I'm pretty much in the dark. So this should be interesting.
Oh, for sure. What? I mean, anything else on that scene?
No. I mean,
Okay.
it's a pretty short scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's brief. And then we have more later. Mm-hmm. But first, we jump to Buck confronting Matthew in the basement. Mm-hmm. Matthew's like, oh, if it's your phone, you put in your passcode. And then, Buck's like, oh, I forget what mine is, as embarrassing as that is. And then Eugene's phone finds the password.
Mm-hmm. Right on time.
Perfectly coordinated. And then we leave the scene.
Yep. Just in time for the lawnmower to show up.
The what now?
I didn't hear anything. Did you?
Do you have a bucket on your head?
No, certainly not. So anyway, we jump back to Jason and Whit.
We find out that 10 years ago they took the Stiletto into custody and cut him a deal where they basically dead Pirate Roberts Tim.
Yeah. Love it.
So that I think that's the implication, at least, that different agents have taken this role over the years. Because otherwise, like, there's no way Jason's been running this for 10 years. 10 years ago was Novacom.
Yeah. Unless the Stiletto is the chairman and it's just been behind it the whole time. Now, that's a fanfic there. Somebody want to write that up?
Yeah.
I will read it.
All right.
Not necessarily on the air, but I am interested in that. If anybody could headcanon some cool ideas together, that'd be fun.
Fair enough. So we find out that, so that he's the Stiletto. This whole green ring is being run overseas. He stumbled upon it when he was on vacation, which
and
he and
Whit's
Whit have
like,
a fun jive about.
Yeah, Whit's like, wow, that's never, I don't know what kind of vacations you go on. I don't get into espionage. And I'm like, what about all of the Blackguard stuff in Chicago, or like any of the other times where that's happened?
I know. I was like, Chicago, the Middle East.
Yeah,
like, I feel
the
like
Labyrinth happened. I mean that happens later, but that's another situation. Yeah, that is a very, very cold take from Whit. And Jason's like, yeah, I guess we must have a different travel agent, which I was really hoping he'd double down and be like, haha, yeah, we do just kind of find ourselves in these wacky situations. But no, they're not that self-aware.
No. So these people overseas are financial terrorists.
Is that a thing that exists in real life?
I don't know. It's not the worst concept. It's just like, of course, the secret goal of these counterfeiters is to like
Destroy
bring down America.
Yeah. The crux of the episode. They're coming after America, and nobody knows why except for like 8 people.
The stakes had to be high. Like, there you see that argument lobbied against Marvel movies all the time, where it's like, why does every movie have to be the world ending? Like, that's just so obnoxious.
Yeah.
Which is like one of the benefits, in my opinion, of the first Spider-Man movie, like the first MCU Spider-Man movie, of just like, hey, what if it was just like a dude with wings?
Haha! Wait, a dude with wings.
Vulture.
Oh, okay.
Michael Keaton.
Yeah, yes. I was trying to remember that movie. I was tracking with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
I mean, like, all the Spider-Mans kind of have this as a thing, but specifically in, like, the MCU context. I'm just like,
Well,
it's great to have...
he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
For sure. Although Far From Home then does kind of just become...
Yeah.
The world's gonna end kind of one.
Well, it goes full, like Marvel Cinematic Universe. Every other
Right.
movie has a big problem in it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And that's what I'm saying, is like, Adventures in Odyssey doesn't need to do that.
No.
The problem could just be like, counterfeiting is bad. It didn't have to be like these counterfeiters are really puppets being like, and the people pulling the string are financial terrorists from overseas who want to see America wrecked.
Yeah.
And isn't that horrible? Because we all love America and capitalism. We wouldn't want to see that crumble.
We'll just add that as
We're focused on the family.
We only focus on the family and never capitalism. Certainly never. Not once do we focus on that.
Yeah. The guy
By the AIO Club.
The guy running everything is called Groat.
Yep.
Mr. Groat.
Not
keeping in the like thing where like they're always misters.
Mr.
Like,
Dent.
Yeah, like I mean, Blackbeard's a doctor, but it's just like none of these bad guys get first name last named.
No. We just,
I mean, like, we occasionally do know their first name last name,
like Philip Glossman.
right? But
The grossest name to say out loud.
also, correction
Philip
that someone was
Glossman.
delightful enough to email us about. We did accidentally say that Philip Glossman was voiced by Phil Lawler earlier in this saga. It's Paul McCusker. We know that. We're just dumb sometimes.
Yeah, we mix them up. Unfortunately, we do be human, though. For now.
Don't tell them that, Andrew.
Whoops.
I'm just waiting for this chip to take over. I don't
Yeah.
have to be human anymore.
I know.
And find a new way to be human.
I'm gonna upload myself to the cloud.
Like that one episode of Black Mirror. Everyone just lives in a server rack. So,
yeah, honestly, wait. I have one thing I wanted to say.
That's not allowed.
I know. I'm sorry. This is your podcast. I'm sorry. I feel like I just invited
Yeah,
myself.
it's not
over.
the Andrew Acebo podcast.
Exactly. I mean, I have my own. I really should just keep my opinions to myself. But no, I totally agree with you in I would have been just as satisfied with the plot if it had ended with the stiletto being the most important person involved. And like something happening where he gets jeopardized and all of that. But it doesn't need to be, financial terrorist from a foreign power that's like
Right.
super distant and not really very authentic to the story, puppeteering everything.
Yeah, they did kind of write themselves into a corner where like they want the reveal of like the stiletto is Jason, but then like there needs to be someone above him for there to be any stakes, and there needs to be a big enough reason that like retired, FBI agent Jason would come back. I think he's technically NSA, but regardless.
Same thing.
Yeah, he's a secret agent.
They just don't get to talk about the stuff that they do.
Whereas Monty's Secret Service and Mitch is FBI.
And I'm a counselor, so I don't get to talk about that either. Well, I'm not a counselor yet, but, different rules about not being
Someday.
able to talk about the work you get to do.
Yeah, and you were going to be a nurse, which has similar issues.
Yes.
I'm an IT person. I can say everything to everybody.
All the time. No privacy here. I know it all.
I can look through your computer at your soul.
Or at least at your browser history. So just be aware of that.
I said soul, Andrew. It's the same thing.
Yeah, kind of.
Use incognito mode, people.
Yeah. Learned that lesson at a young age. Such a story for another time.
Wad Fam Jackpot After Dark.
Oh man. Yeah. Anyway,
Jason then kind of lays some other stuff on the table, which is the auction is going to be this front to transport all the money, which we kind of already knew.
Yeah.
And that Tanner just joined in late in the game to try and get some money. He doesn't know. We kind of reveal that he has no idea who Skint is, which is interesting. Or it's just like he knows Dirk and he knows Archie, but like Skint kind of works under Archie, and so there's not really reason for him to be aware. But also he's such a central player.
Yeah, he's so important and seems to be well connected, and at least for the audience is kind of the surrogate to what is important.
Right, to
that's
the
happening.
he is our lens into the villainy. I mean, him
Yeah.
and Buck.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting that Jason has no real conception of them. And then Wit says his iconic line, "Aren't you in danger of getting lost in this labyrinth of lies?"
Yeah.
Which I thought I kept thinking of throughout this as we're as we're listening to these promos and like the iconic lines are coming up and whatnot. But I kept going like, that must be like a line for the labyrinth.
It's
Nope.
not.
It's for this.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. You really would think, and maybe that was just some next level setting up for future.
well, I imagine
things.
those episodes are named that because of this line.
I hope so. I really hope so.
But yeah, that just echoed throughout those promos on the page.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yep. And then Jason kind of comes back of like, if I don't do this, who's going to? And it's like, that's a good conversation for another time. And I'm like, I agree. Jason Whittaker and his hero complex is like a thing I'd love to get into. However, I have a weird feeling that Wit's not going to be a good person to confront him about that.
Certainly
as he
not
has a similar problem.
Yes, very, very much so. We need some Tom Riley action here. We need a good Bernard, hard reset.
Yeah.
Give you some reality check.
Look, I know we've said it before, but like Lily Graham could be that. She does some really great grounding of Wit later in this episode, and I'm really feeling it.
Oh, man. I ship it so hard. That's what I should put. There's a lot of, on the Adventures in Odyssey side of Instagram, there's a lot of people talking about, ships and unpopular relationship opinions. I think the Tanniker, is that going to be the ship name?
It's not
Oh,
Tanner,
no, it would be Graham.
Gramiker.
Gramiker or
Wittilly.
Wittilly?
I don't know. Her first name's Lily.
Yeah.
I was trying to see if I could work that in there, but yeah. There's potential.
Lit wham.
Lit wham. It's pretty good. I
It's
feel like
not a great one. It's
I
probably
feel
just
like
some
my only I don't want to say non-canon, but like my only subtextual ships are Wit and Lily Graham and Blackard and Shakespeare.
Oh.
Like those are the only two.
What about Cal and Alex?
No, dude, they're cousins.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
We combined their names for completely different reasons.
Yep. And it makes sense that I would forget that. All right.
With then kind of like we go out on this scene on him just being like, how do we pray? Because Jason's like, look, we're gonna need a lot of prayer. And with like, how do we pray that a deception will work?
Yeah.
And Jason's like, we have to pray that like in the end, truth overcomes. Which is not bad.
Yeah.
I think it's like decent nuance.
Yeah.
I like the little back and forth between them where they're like, yeah, maybe this isn't like great work for us to be doing.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just appreciate their relationship dynamic in that. I mean, Jason seems a lot closer to a peer that Wit has than we get, with the exception of Lily Graham, as previously mentioned.
But yes, it is like they have like a nice little like where Wit's concerned about Monty and Jason's like, well, yeah, he's my nephew as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But like that, it's not like it doesn't feel like this. It feels like Wit can serve in more of a mentor role, and they're somewhat on the same level than like, I am your father and listen to me, which is like a good call for an adult child, but like also you never know.
Yeah, it could with Wit, depending on which Wit shows up.
Right.
So yeah,
then we get to the crux of the episode.
Well, certainly something. Penny and Connie at the meeting, at the cult meeting, not cult, weird thing. They're not doing anything before the meeting. They're just sitting there meditating. Connie's like, that's weird. I don't understand this, which is kind of annoying. But I also understand that, like, there's the relationship between meditation and religion is very strong and storied and deeply intertwined. But the relationship between, like, specifically, you know, evangelical culture and conservatism and meditation, it can get vilified because of it has kind of Eastern roots, and you get the idea of like meditation on things other than God and things like that. But it doesn't seem to be that that's the angle that Penny or Trask is taking here, because Penny talks about meditating on a crack in the windowsill and seeing that as like a metaphor of kind of missing the forest through the trees. And, you know, understanding that, you know, we spend a lot of time looking at the imperfections in life, but like it can make us miss the wonderful things that are also happening.
And Connie says that that's profound.
Yeah.
And okay.
And then Trask shows up.
But I want to get into something that I think is interesting here. So what I'm not sure of is, so Focus is being like the show is clearly condemning some portions of this and less clearly condemning the portions that I think are less condemnable.
Yeah.
And what I can't tell is if they are giving those a pass and saying like, yeah, that's fine, or, and I think because it's a kid's show and that's who's primarily going to be listening to, I'm afraid there's like some guilt by association where like it feels a bit like they have an axe to grind against a lot of this stuff, but can only like solidly grind it against specific things. But if they just like lump those specific things and call out those things specifically while portraying all of this other stuff alongside it, then you can paint the picture that all of this stuff is bad.
Exactly, yeah.
And I want to believe that that is me overanalyzing things. But it's
hard to tell because when you talk about religion, especially with Odyssey, there is very much an agenda, a curriculum of theological points that we want to make and everything like that. And so, at least for me, listening to it as an adult, you know, when we enter in scenes like this, I do at least overthink it or think about it a little bit more as far as like, okay, what are they really trying to push here? Like what is that? And it does get gray in certain areas and how they present things. And like you said, like they paint relatively good things in a bad light and they paint bad things in a good light sometimes, depending on the scene.
Yeah, it is just a thing of like, I am fine to exist in the gray. Like, that works for me. However, I worry that like the message that is construed from this episode is like meditation is bad. Even though that's never what's explicitly said. The essentially like as we go through this scene, like they're gonna like meditate on some tarot cards that Salvador Dali created because Trask is like, those are going to, like, essentially God created everything. We're not everything. We're not using these. That would be wrong, but we are, experiencing him through them. And I'm like, all right, Trask, like, you're weird and slimy and whatever. But what I'm worried is communicated through this is, like, I'm worried there's a little bit of baby with the bathwater happening here. The guilt by association. The thing of like, oh yes, this person who is promoting meditation, which is
good and in the Bible.
Right. Not a bad thing.
Keep this word of the law always on your lips, meditating on it day and night. I had to memorize it for Bible college. Like, it's important. Right. You're supposed to spend time intentionally thinking about the things of God, like that, and that's what meditation is. I mean, it's just intentional thinking. Right.
And so you have this problem where it's like, if the only person promoting an idea is a person who the show is condemning, then that idea is being condemned, even if they aren't explicitly saying that.
Yeah.
And it feels like a little bit of a game where it's like, well, if we said that, meditation was bad, that would be like, that would cause concern and be, unbiblical. But if we have a bad character encourage people to meditate, we get across that same message without like them being able to point fingers at us.
Yeah. Being kind of passive aggressive almost.
Yeah. And I don't know.
And you get that in the music that plays behind his prayer at the end of the scene, which is where it goes out on. And I understand that it's kind of a vague prayer, and he emphasizes that like God is above us and beyond us, which I understand how you can lose some of the the personal relationship with God in that, and it makes sense.
Well,
but it's also not a terrible prayer.
It's not a terrible prayer. There are like subtle things, and like, this is the problem, is it's like, I want to compliment the show for not just broad strokes bad guying this. At the same time, it's
their alternative is being passive aggressive.
It's a kids program, and I don't know that it's clear.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough thing to discuss. Yeah. And there's just that part of his prayer that was just like, oh, okay. Like, is he says like, God, I invite you to join us here in this meeting. And it's like, okay, is a kid going to pick up the nuance of like, oh, it's weird that he's like inviting God, like the like, are they trying to be like, oh, well, you shouldn't be like giving God permission to be there? Like, I think is the point that line, I think that's how that line is supposed to be bad, but like so unclear.
Yeah, it's incredibly unclear. Well, and also it's something that like you hear it in worship songs all the time, where a prayer or a song begins with an invitation for God's presence, and what does that look like? And I don't think that Focus is necessarily knocking those things intentionally, at least. But it definitely comes across as Connie is thinking about God and Trask is thinking about God, but they're thinking about two different gods. And maybe that isn't maybe that isn't completely incorrect. But again, it's complex, and it's for children, and like to have that amount of nuance as far as, I just feel like they could have made it clearer. They could have made it a little bit more broad strokes bad, or a little bit more like compelling as to,
or be clearer about what parts you're condemning.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, and it's tough because like, I don't think it's poorly written.
No.
And I think I like getting to see Connie process through this stuff and be like, this is the stuff that like I like, this is the stuff that raised a red flag for me, and this is the stuff that, like, you know, I might be more positive about and whatever. And, like, I like that she can be that filter a bit.
Mm-hmm. And kind of show some autonomy.
Yeah.
In that. Yeah, and they have a good kind of conversation afterwards.
Yeah.
Between Penny and Connie about how she feels about the interaction.
Well, I mean, she just rants.
Yeah.
And Penny asks for French fries. And then says, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just right. And yeah, she does have an outburst where she calls it satanic in class.
Mm-hmm.
But like, and
but it's not even necessarily an outburst. She seems deeply uncomfortable. Like,
right.
Like, isn't that like kind of wrong?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is not a bad take.
No.
to question it. I mean, yeah. Tarot cards spook me, that's for sure.
Like, it is. No, I think it's a good take, and I like that we're getting this, like, flip side kind of the bad mentor for Connie, and that she sees through it to some extent, but also isn't. Like, I like that she's a little bit in the gray here. That it's not a clear... Because, like, I think that's... Yeah, it's the thing that is both at once the most compelling way to do it, and also gives me some trepidation and concern about how they're doing it. Is it's like, I don't want, like, I don't want it to be, like... Like, I like that she has to be discerning. And maybe as we continue through the arc, like Connie and her conversations with Penny and Wit and Trask and all that will bring clarity to this situation. And I won't feel so weird about it. But in this episode, it just struck me as like, are they trying to, like, are they intentionally saying stuff with subtext, or is it just coming off that way?
Yeah. Well, and because historically, Odyssey does do a bit of, you know, painting with a broad brush bad, if that makes sense.
Right.
And, you know, doesn't have as much attention to nuance. But I agree with how thoroughly balanced your opinion is on this. It is really nice. And it makes it hard to move on because I feel like there's got to be another point to make for the other side. But
this is what I'm just hoping is that as we go through these other episodes, more clarity will come to what it is they are trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
And they will be more clear about whether or not they are wholeheartedly condemning or whether or not they're going like, okay, there's actually some stuff that's okay here. It'll be interesting as we proceed to kind of track this whole thing. I just wanted to really draw attention to it here because I did feel so mixed on it.
Yeah.
It's rare that I feel this conflicted in a take.
Yeah, actually, it is very rare. Very, very rare. It feels like you flipped a coin and it landed on its side, kind of.
Yeah. Not a bad visualization.
So the next scene is Wit on the phone with Dr. Graham.
This might be my favorite like exchange in the episode. Look, I really, really like this episode.
Yes, me too.
I think that not only is there a ton of plot movement and good stuff, but there's also, like we just talked about, in a couple different instances, there's good stuff to dig into. It's like my platonic ideal of an episode of Odyssey that we cover.
Yeah. Stuff.
And so, yeah.
It's just, I don't have the words. I just am happy.
Yeah. And so this is like a great scene between where Wit calls up Dr. Graham, who's got Maury at the hospital.
Maury.
Who's got...
She put him in the hospital herself.
Yeah.
Somebody's got him.
Hope so.
Hopefully it's Emily. I know that's some eye for an eye, bad take stuff there, but... If Emily's the one that gives Maury his just desserts, I'm not gonna complain.
However, if she ends up dating him, I'm going to kill myself.
I'm going to stop recording this podcast and jump off a bridge. That is the direct course of action. And I don't live
option.
that close to a bridge.
No. We'll drive to the bridge together.
Yes, exactly. It'll be nice.
You'll...
We can listen to our favorite episode. We'll listen to The Mortal Coil.
No. We clearly have to listen to Pokenberry Christmas.
Oh, duh.
If you're going to throw yourself off a bridge, I'm going to throw myself... Or you're going to, like... You're going to be trying to jump off the bridge, and then I'm going to, like, stumble and fall, and then you can fall after me, and then lose your hearing or whatever.
Oh. Nah, see, I was just, preoccupied with death, but that's kind of on brand for me.
Yeah. So
back to the scene that we love so much.
Yeah. So the whole thing is like Whit calls the hospital to talk to Monty, and Lily Graham is just like, no, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. She's like, he needs rest. There is nothing he can do. You guys are too busy playing cops and robbers. Like, this person is in trouble. He is not doing well. It's not like the movies where you can just get bonked on the head and be fine, which I love. Mm-hmm. And then Whit's like, okay, well, I'm coming over there. She's like, no, you're not. You're not going to do any good. You're just going to make him agitated. Like, you get to stay, do what's best for Monty and stay out of this. Mm-hmm. And Whit's like, well, yeah, but you don't know what's going on. She's like, it does not matter what is going on. He needs to be well. Yeah. You need to be cool with that.
All I care about is the health of your grandson, and I would hope that you would too. Yeah. Is what she says. And Whit's just like, gulp.
I know.
And we've been sat down.
We've been talking about, like, Whit needing people to hold him accountable.
Boom, here we go.
Lily Graham. Killing it.
Graham just showing up and giving us the most. I am so here for it.
It's great. And both, like, in her holding him accountable, we get an instance of a fallible Whit, which I think we've been talking about a lot as being really important. Mm-hmm. So,
and less and less common in this era of Odyssey.
Yeah. Just happy about this scene overall.
Yeah, it's great because this I don't know, the plot structure is really fun because it's Whit on the phone with Dr. Graham right after Jason leaves because he says that Polehouse is going to come, and then Polehouse shows up. And so, we kind of get the really fun sound engineering of the police showing up on the scene and kind of guns a-blazing, and Whit's like, well, there's nothing in there, you don't need to go inside, there's nothing really going on, everybody left, and Polehouse is like, well, I'll make them check again, they need to practice. And here, Polehouse and Whit kind of catch each other up. It's established that, like, Tanner was obviously in on it. Visiting the pilot wasn't necessarily a ruse, she was there, but that's not the entire story. It's also established that Buck's fingerprint was the missing fingerprint on the dollar bills that was mentioned in, like, episode 5 or something like that. It's been
maybe even earlier.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like maybe episode 2 or 3.
Yeah, the partial print on the bill is Buck's.
Yeah,
which confirms even more suspicions. And
right. Well, and we have the DNA test, which was, yeah. So, I mean, so this is like hours later. And so I was like, okay, like, how does this actually work? And it's like, okay, so there is actually, like, the FBI does use rapid DNA, which can return a test in like 2 hours rather than multiple weeks. However, it does require a full cheek swab, which they didn't get.
Well,
but
depending on where the toothpick was, I think you could get a solid amount of skin cells in there.
Okay.
You could get a good amount. I mean, I used some of that stuff in, like, microbiology, and they used a lot of toothpicks for scraping up samples. It could happen. It's
maybe
not entirely, but it's not great. It doesn't look great.
Also, for what it's worth, rapid DNA was only authorized in 2017.
Oh, so this is just false.
So I think this is just fiction.
Cool.
Which,
okay,
I mean,
I'm glad that we established that.
Yeah.
Then.
I do.
Nope.
Terrorism's just fiction.
Terrorism actually isn't real. It's never happened, not once. The only thing to be afraid of is fear itself.
Wow. You're not like a, well, I guess they're all, never mind. Moving on.
Yep, that's a bad take, bad joke. Terrorism is very real. It hurts a lot of people.
Yeah, but not as much as our retaliation does.
I mean, some might say that it is also terrorism.
Uh-huh.
Just depends on what side of history you're on, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Come now, you masters of war, who build the big guns.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the next scene, but yeah. Basically, we're just painting this whole picture that Buck is involved, and so Polehouse kind of tasks Wit to go track him down. Mm-hmm. I will say, so Wit ends the scene with Jason going like, "What am I supposed to tell Polehouse?" Mm-hmm. And lucky for him, Polehouse just like asks the perfect questions to where Wit doesn't have to tell him anything. Mm-hmm. Where Wit explains that like Monty's at the hospital, and Polehouse doesn't ask, "Wait, did you take him there and then come back here?
Yeah.
Which hospital? Why is he under a fake name? Like, why weren't we alerted of that by the hospital?" There's just like, there's a lot of like
pertinent follow-up questions.
Yeah, follow-up questions that like, would be good. And then
helpful for a police investigation.
And then Wit, like Polehouse asks Wit what Tanner's motivations were, and then Wit has an answer.
Yeah,
and it's like, where did Wit get the answer? Where he's like, yeah, she was like bringing, trying to like buy her way in with Monty, and it's like, but how would you know that? Were you talking to Monty? Mm-hmm. Like, she ran away and left him there, which Polehouse seems concerned with at first and then just kind of ignores. It's all it's just like, well, it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, we just kind of yada past this because it would bring the story to a halt if we were to if we were going to need to explain this. Mm-hmm. But
of course,
Polehouse does tell Wit that Tanner went to see the pilot.
Yeah.
And that the pilot was able to corroborate Monty's story. Mm-hmm.
This is when Polehouse says that he's going to visit the Ross compound, which is
the old Ross complex.
It's a real big deal.
Is it a complex or a compound?
I think both words might be used in this scene.
It is compound. I wrote down complex because I'm dumb.
I have compound written.
Okay, Andrew's smarter, guys.
But yeah, for once I actually wrote down the right thing in Dylan. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure I spelled it correctly too. Wow, great job.
Nice. Yeah. So there was a militia owner or
militia owner.
Yes. Well, I mean, kind of. So there's this guy who's like
a doomsday prepper.
Old Ross, who's a doomsday prepper, militia type, had this compound that he like armed to the teeth, conspiracy theorist nut. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like a lot of like focus is demographic.
Yeah.
Weird how 10 years changes things.
Interesting.
But yeah, he was arrested.
No, we're the ones bunkering down and wearing masks. We're the conspiracy believers.
Yes.
Don't you know?
Yeah, we believe the conspiracy that the
government
is feeding us because we're sheep. But
that's why I'm going to the cloud.
This Ross man was arrested for making whiskey.
Bootleg whiskey,
and is still in jail.
Yep. Well, they also found a ton of like presumably unregistered weapons.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's the old Ross compound, which implies that like it's been there for a while.
Yeah. But I don't know what the penalty in Odyssey
jail.
for.
We also just it's by Trickle Lake. I'm disappointed that we haven't heard about this before, and I really hope that we hear about it a lot in the future. I hope that this just becomes like the second Wit's End.
The Ross compound.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing. I mean, it's where the Bones of Wrath hide out. They get their hands on some like 40-year-old mines. accidentally blow up a shopping cart. I don't know.
It's just
Some Odyssey shenanigans.
it's a choice for sure.
It really, really is.
And then
and it's convenient.
and Polehouse then gets it's convenient that Whit knows like all this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the old Ross
Ross
compound that I know exactly about, and why he's in jail and what was there, and yeah.
Also, loving the direct reference to alcohol. It happens every once in a while, though not very often.
Well, and this time they were sure to, directly tag the consequences with it, so he is in jail.
I mean, they always are. The only other time I can think about it is the aforementioned Pokenberry Falls, except RFD, in which they are also immediately condemned for alcohol.
I want to poke holes in it with maybe some, Imagination Station adventures, but I don't think that counts.
Let's talk about the Imagination Station adventure where Noah gets drunk. They did
Isaac
that one,
Morton
right?
is traumatized after he sees Noah lay with his sister. Or no, his daughter, right?
Yeah.
His daughter, yeah. Oh, boy.
His sister perished in the flood, if he had one.
I mean, knowing ancient times, she probably died as, a 3-week-old baby, so.
Oof. Love it. So yeah, then Martin calls Polehouse and is like, a big truck just pulled up, and Polehouse is like, all right, I'm on my way.
And that's where the scene ends.
Yep. And we cut to Katrina and Jay.
Another reason why I love this episode so much.
Jay's covering the counter eating ice cream.
Yep.
Then Whit calls, finds out that, is like, wait, you're telling me that Dirk's phone was there all along?
Yeah.
Katrina puts Jay on speaker to, explain the situation.
Mid spoonfuls of ice cream. The sound engineering is great. It's hilarious.
It's really fun.
And Jay puts on a great performance with kind of the whole nonchalant, I'm preoccupied, but I'm saying something really important bit. Yeah, and then Whit realizes that the phone that's in his basement is Dirk's phone, and he tells Katrina and Jay to not let Buck leave, and that's when we cut to Matthew and Eugene and Buck downstairs.
Yep, and this is where the whole, they reveal that the password is stiletto.
Because of course it is.
It's so obnoxious, I hate that.
At least Sherlock was funny.
Amen.
I'm dead. That was the password on my phone for a long time.
Okay, tech nerd thing. That one always bugged me, though, just for the pure reason that it's
it's 4 digits. That's
4 digits that are letters, and you type them in, and they don't turn to dots.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, the lock screen of the phone just said, I am locked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was cute, and I liked it. And
well, and phones were different back then, OS looked different.
I can suspend some disbelief for a good joke.
Yes. For a delightful tech pun.
Which, the stiletto is not.
No.
And so then Buck and Matthew, get into an all-out brawl over the phone. Katrina comes downstairs and just,
uses her dog voice.
It's so good.
Yeah. When my mom gets really upset, sometimes she breaks out her dog voice, and that's when she's talking to the dogs, and her voice gets real deep and real loud, and it's so good. She just shuts everybody up. Everything comes to a screeching halt. And she's like, I'm making a citizen's arrest on Buck.
And then Buck's like, well, you gotta catch me first. Throws the phone on the ground and runs away.
So much for an insurance policy, Spike.
Yep.
Which, if he already had the phone in his hand, why wouldn't he have just left?
What? Well, because that was this distraction.
Oh, yeah.
They all looked at the phone.
And he ran
hey,
away.
look at that big yellow phone book.
Yeah.
And then he ran away.
The old look at the yellow phone book trick. It worked in Pokenberry Falls. Yeah. And
then he's running outside, and Jay stops him with an ice cream scoop. He's like, it's loaded.
I know how to use it. He's like,
and then
that's an ice cream scoop. And he's like, yeah.
And then Whit walks in, and I think in a really great moment, Buck immediately tries to like weasel his way out of it and just be like, hey, Wit, like these people are going crazy here. I got to get out of here. And Wit's just like, no.
No. Yeah, he sees right through the game. Right through the manipulation. There's some lines of dialogue, like in the previous scene where he's like, oh, I thought that this was supposed to be a trusting town and whatever. And is this the scene where Wit says there's a difference between being loving and trusting and blindly stupid?
Yes. I believe Eugene says that to
Eugene
him.
says it,
not Wit, but yes.
Yeah.
And then we jump over to Skint talking with Mr. Dosh.
Of course.
Phil Lawler.
Yes.
Who's like, hey, Skint, there's a cop watching. And he's like, it's Mr. Skint. And then he's like, well, I'm just going to take him some coffee. Which I was like, oh.
The neighborly thing to do.
Yeah. Which is what Bernard does.
Oh, yeah.
For the secret agent in Eugene Returns.
Does he make coffee?
Where he's talking about the person who's having a stakeout.
Yeah.
Across the street. And Bernard's just like, oh, well, you know what we do? We take him some coffee. And so
then it
Tom
works.
and Connie and Bernard come over and are just like,
you want some coffee?
Here you go. You can and you can follow me later. I'll be washing some windows. And, yeah, that whole.
Wait, isn't that Novacom? No, Novacom. It's them signing off with the security cameras.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Love that scene.
Yep. Another
God,
good scene.
miss
But yes, I just like Skint, doing something that other characters in Odyssey who are the good guys have previously done.
Yeah. And yeah, so then we cut to Polehouse getting in the car with the cop, wakes him up, turns out Martin is asleep.
Yeah, I think this sound engineering is not great.
Yeah.
I think that it was unclear that Polehouse was getting into Martin's car.
Yeah.
But then, yes, it sounds more like Martin is getting into Polehouse's car.
Very much so.
And yeah, I don't.
Except for he's the drugged one that sounds disoriented and out of it. He's like, I got really sleepy really fast. They brought me this coffee.
He's such an idiot. The fact that he knew the person from the compound brought him the coffee and then said, like, I know you will get tired on a stakeout. Here's some coffee. It's like, if it had been like some random person walking up from the streets, slightly better.
Yeah.
But when you like watch the dude walk in, this just is dumb. But Polehouse is like, well, but he did at least know that the truck was registered to Uncle Archie's.
Yeah, strangely enough, he goes, they gave me the coffee and I got really sleepy. I didn't see the truck, but I did get the license number and I did look it up and it is tied to Archie's Carnival.
Yep. And then Polehouse, rather than get a search warrant, decides he's going to return the mug.
Yes. Yeah, he's going to do the neighborly thing and give him back the mug.
Yeah. We kind of glossed over it, and we talked about it earlier, but Connie rants to Penny about the class.
Oh, yes.
And her big thing, which I think is a good thing to underline in all this, is she's just like, look, like, I'm not saying any of this stuff is bad, but like, we should be grounded in scripture and not just like, hey, let's think some thoughts and then like
say that they're God.
That's right.
Yeah.
That line is amazing, and I wish I had it written down. But where she's like, without that grounding, it's easy to look at things and think that that's God.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, I like that where it's like, good to see God in all things, but also if you start like discerning truths from those things that you're looking, like, check it against scripture, check it against good counsel. Don't just like build your own version of Christianity off of the thoughts in your head.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. Some theologians have done it and gotten very popular.
Yep.
Not gonna name any names, but you know.
No, I'm fine. We're moving.
You already know.
You have to ask.
You know.
You know. So yeah, and then we have a scene where Buck is. Oh, sorry. So that ends then with Penny saying that they should discuss this on their hike tomorrow. Which, looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah. And the next episode.
Yeah. Then Buck's calling Skint from Wit's office because I guess he was left alone and had access to a phone.
Yeah, that's not really explained.
Nope, not at all. But the important part of this scene is that Skint just flat out abandons him. It's like, look, boy, you're
just
on your own.
Yeah.
They're using you to get to me, and I can't be got.
Yep, and I can't be got. I'm just, like, I gotta say bye.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then...
Why you gotta throw Detroit around like that? Rest in peace.
Yeah. Andrew is wearing a Detroit Tigers shirt as we record.
Yes, yeah. No, it's a bit sad. But, you know, I mean, it doesn't have the best reputation as a metropolitan area, so I understand.
Yeah. And then our final scene of the episode.
Yeah. It's Stiletto and Archie.
Dun, dun, dun. They meet at last.
Mm-hmm. And they are... Jason's kind of doing a bad job of being the Stiletto, I feel like.
Very
He's
much
like,
so.
oh, let's confirm the plan, make sure we know it. And then Archie's like, well, the plan has kind of changed.
Right.
And...
The fact that Jason is out of the loop, I don't understand why he thinks that this would get him in the loop.
Asking to be in
Like,
the loop.
it's weird that
I'm
he
the
is...
Stiletto, of course I'm in the loop. Except
Right,
for when I'm
right,
not in the
right.
loop, so put me in the loop.
Right. And
So many loops.
Yeah, and basically the situation is like, the auction's going to be rigged, but they're no longer transporting the stuff in the trucks. That plan changed. And then... and then Archie's just like, wait, why don't you know any of this stuff? And he's like, oh, I wasn't clued in. And Grote's like, oh, and Archie's like, oh, well then Mr. Grote must have had his reasons. You know, he's gonna be in Odyssey. You should just talk to him yourself. And Jason's like, oh, he's gonna be in Odyssey, and he's like, you really don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Which is crazy because Grote was only introduced, this episode?
Yes.
And now he's coming to Odyssey tomorrow.
Yep. And
Seems like a terrible idea.
And
to be that
Jason
close to a
went
major
from
operation.
being like the person who was like on top and in the know to being fully in the dark just because like, well, we need him to be able to like
overcome something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then
Archie gets a mysterious phone call.
Yes. And he says, so he either says brother or rather.
It sounds like brother.
Right. It might be rather. It might be brother. I was like, oh, are they doing a thing where like we're saying brother so that you think that it's, you know, Wally? But of course it's not because they established they have so many siblings.
Yeah.
Or is he just saying rather in a weird accent? But regardless, they're going to remove the stiletto.
Yeah, you should be removed from their plan or altogether. Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Andrew?
I mean, nothing other than I really liked this episode. There was so much that happened. It flowed really well. It jumped from scene to scene, and with the exception of, you know, Martin in the car, like, I felt like it made a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're holding space for difficult conversations, and we've got some good character moments. I'm excited to see where it's going, and I'm pleasantly surprised with how much I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, it's really good. I wanna call attention to something I forgot to mention earlier, but like Townsend Coleman is doing an amazing job as Jason in this episode. Mm-hmm. There's a thing when he's talking with Whit where he keeps dropping into like a bit of the stiletto gravel, which is just this great feel of like he's been doing this character for so long, like Jason has been, not Townsend Coleman.
Yeah.
But, like he's been doing this character of like being the stiletto that like he can't fully drop out of it.
Yeah,
where like he's still like some things he stays still come through kind of stiletto-y.
Yeah.
And I think that is an incredible touch.
That is really well done. You are 100% right. That little like inflection that stays around. Yeah. Love it.
And yeah, that's
it?
all I gotta say. Yeah, I'm really into this one. Excited to see where we go next. Yeah, if you're cool with it, we'll be back in a week.
I plan on being back in a week.
All right. So we will be back next week talking about episode 688, The Green Ring Conspiracy, Part 10. We're finally making it to the final day, folks.
Double digits!
Woo woo!
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Wadfam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. Follow the podcast at Wadfam Chalk Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. The Green Ring Conspiracy Part 9 was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo, and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wadfam Chalk Pod.